March 17, 1968. Con Tum Province, Central Highlands of Vietnam. Dawn has not arrived yet, but the jungle is already awake. Moist air presses against skin and canvas alike, thick with rot and leaf mold. On a narrow ridgeline above the Dak Bla River, 6 men lie still beneath poncho hooches pulled low, faces smeared with charcoal and insect repellent. Their boots are unlaced. No metal touches metal. Even the radios are wrapped in tape to kill the shine. Staff Sergeant Tom Kearney, 26 years old, LRRP team leader, checks his watch by touch alone. He does not look at a map. He knows exactly where he is. 2 clicks east, an NVA logistics trail snakes along the slope. 3 clicks west, a village that officially does not exist. Beneath him, somewhere in the green blackout, move men who would kill his entire team if they were heard. Kearney raises 2 fingers. No words, no whispered orders. The patrol adjusts on instinct. This is Detachment B-52, 5th Special Forces Group, temporarily redesignated Company F LRRP, 75th Infantry. On paper, they belong to the division. In practice, they belong to no one but each other. Below the ridge, conventional infantry units are forming up for morning patrols. Platoon leaders check head counts. Radio operators test comms. Orders will be issued, routes assigned, objectives named. Those units will move by doctrine, by schedule, by the book. Up here, none of that applies. Kearney's authority does not come from the rank on his collar. It comes from something more fragile and more dangerous: permission to decide alone. If he aborts the mission, no one will court-martial him. If he bypasses a target, no colonel will demand an explanation. If he orders the team to lie frozen for 12 hours while an enemy battalion passes within grenade range, that decision is final. That trust did not exist anywhere else in Vietnam. The men with Kearney know it. Specialist 4th Class Danny Ruiz, point man, carries an M16 cut short and wrapped in burlap. Sergeant Larry Hawk Whitman, radio operator, keeps the PRC-25 dry against his chest, antenna bent low. Private 1st Class Ed Henson, rear security, counts heartbeats instead of steps. Each of them has passed selection that eliminated most volunteers. Each of them has already watched someone die quietly. They are not here to fight. They are here to see, without being seen. At 0612, movement flickers through the trees, shapes, packs, weapons slung low. North Vietnamese Army regulars, organized, disciplined, confident. Kearney does not count bodies and he watches behavior, spacing, pace, load. This is not a patrol, this is resupply. Whitman raises his eyebrows. Kearney nods once. No report yet. In a conventional unit, doctrine would demand contact, or at least immediate reporting up the chain. Here, silence is survival. A radio transmission risks direction finding. A burst of static can draw artillery onto their own position. So Kearney waits. He waits because he is allowed to wait. This is what separated long-range reconnaissance patrols from every other infantry element in Vietnam. They were trusted to choose inaction. The difference was not accidental. It had been carved out by blood and failure years earlier, when commanders learned that jungle warfare punished rigidity. LRRPs were born from that lesson. Small teams, deep insertion, no safety net, no quick reaction force within reach. Helicopters only came if the weather, the enemy, and luck aligned at the same moment. The men below pass within 30 meters. One stumbles. Another laughs quietly. Kearney smells cigarette smoke and clenches his jaw. Ruiz tightens his grip. No one fires. No one moves. The column disappears downslope. Only then does Kearney lean close to Whitman and murmur a grid coordinate, enemy strength estimate, direction of travel. Whitman keys the radio for less than 5 seconds. Then silence again. That transmission will shape airstrikes and battalion movements days from now. It will redirect units that will never know these 6 men existed. Back at division headquarters, no one will question why Kearney did not engage. No one will ask why he chose concealment over body count. They already know the answer. LRRPs were treated differently because they had to be. Their missions could not survive the weight of constant oversight. Their effectiveness depended on commanders who understood that control kills reconnaissance. And so, quietly, against every instinct of a hierarchical army, certain men were given a freedom others never touched. On the ridge, the jungle exhales. Kearney checks his watch again. The patrol will stay put until nightfall, then slip south, unseen. Below, the war continues loudly. Up here, it moves in whispers. The ridge goes quiet again, but no one relaxes. The men remain prone, muscles locked, breathing shallow. Hours stretch without movement. Ants crawl across knuckles, sweat pools beneath ribs. In a conventional infantry unit, this kind of stillness would be wasted time. For a LRRP, it is work. Kearney learned that lesson long before Quantum. 2 years earlier at Fort Benning, he had volunteered for a program that came with no guarantees and no prestige. There was no parade for long-range reconnaissance patrols, no recruiting posters, no promises of medals. The cadre simply told the volunteers the truth. Most of you will not make it, not because you are weak, but because you cannot be trusted to be alone. The first men to quit did so quickly. 12-mile ruck marches with no time hacks. Land navigation exercises where instructors deliberately lied about distances. Radio drills conducted under sleep deprivation, with wrong frequencies fed on purpose. Candidates were not corrected when they made mistakes. They were watched. The cadre wanted to see who froze without orders. Kearney remembered a night movement through swamp terrain, water up to his chest, rifle held above his head. A man behind him panicked, started breathing too fast. The instructor did not intervene. Kearney had to decide, break silence to help, or let the man self-correct. He chose silence. The man recovered. That decision stayed on his record. LRRPs were not selected for aggression. They were selected for judgment under isolation. The Army already had plenty of men willing to charge forward. What it lacked were soldiers capable of withholding action when every instinct screamed to move. That philosophy carried over into Vietnam. Regular infantry companies rotated replacements constantly. New privates arrived every few weeks, unfamiliar with terrain, units, or leadership. Orders were simplified because they had to be. Platoons moved together because cohesion was fragile. Firepower compensated for uncertainty. LRRP teams were the opposite. Once assembled, they were rarely broken apart. A 6-man team might operate together for months, learning each other's breathing rhythms, hand signals, and fears. Commanders avoided reassignments unless absolutely necessary. Trust, once built, was not wasted, and trust was everything. Back on the ridge, Kearney lifts his head slightly. The light has changed. Sun filters through the canopy now, turning moisture into a shimmering haze. Ruiz crawls forward inch by inch, careful not to break fern fronds. He spots movement again, this time not NVA, but civilians. Women carrying baskets, children barefoot in the mud. The rules for a regular infantry unit would be clear: identify, secure, question, possibly detain. For a LRRP team, those rules do not apply. Contact with civilians risks compromise. Compromise leads to pursuit. Pursuit leads to encirclement. Kearney signals halt. They let the villagers pass unobserved. This autonomy extended even to rules of engagement. While conventional units operated under strict guidance shaped by political pressure and body count metrics, LRRPs were quietly exempted. No one expected them to bring back prisoners. No one demanded confirmation kills. Their value lay entirely in what they reported, not what they destroyed. That difference bred resentment. Infantry officers sometimes accused LRRPs of cowardice. "You guys never fight," one captain had told Kearney in Pleiku. "Must be nice." Kearney hadn't argued. He knew that captain would never be sent 6 days behind enemy lines with no resupply and a single extraction window. He knew the Army did not ask infantry platoons to choose between killing 1 man and saving 5 by doing nothing. By midday, the heat becomes punishing. Henson shifts slightly, muscles trembling. Kearney locks eyes with him, gives a slow nod. Endure. This expectation that LRRP soldiers would self-regulate, endure discomfort without supervision, and make decisions with strategic consequences meant they were treated less like line infantry and more like independent assets. Battalion commanders requested LRRP coverage the way they requested air reconnaissance. They did not tell teams how to operate. They told them what they needed to know. When Whitman transmits again at 1320, it is because Kearney judges the information time-sensitive enough to risk detection. Enemy movement has increased. He gives grid, direction, estimated unit size. No embellishment, no speculation, just facts. That discipline is another reason LRRPs were trusted. Their reports were reliable because they were not filtered through layers of pressure. A LRRP had no incentive to exaggerate. No colonel was waiting to punish low contact numbers. Accuracy, not aggression, kept them alive. As the sun begins to drop, the jungle cools slightly. Shadows stretch. Somewhere to the east, artillery thumps, a response to information that may have come from another LRRP team operating under the same unwritten rules. Kearney knows that when darkness falls, they will move. Not because an order says so, because he decides it is time. That freedom, to act without permission, to survive without guidance, was not given lightly. It was earned through selection that stripped away anyone who needed certainty. And it was the reason LRRPs lived by a different code than the rest of the war. Night comes without ceremony in the Central Highlands. One moment, the jungle is dim and green. The next, it is black, sound replacing sight. Crickets swell, frogs pulse. Somewhere far off, a single AK round cracks, then nothing. At 19:04, Kearney gives the signal to move. There is no route briefing, no rally point marked on a map. Each man already knows the plan because the plan was discussed in fragments over days, revised in silence, refined by shared experience. They move in a staggered file, spacing measured in instinct rather than meters. Ruiz leads, toes testing ground before weight commits. Whitman follows, antenna bent, hand guarding the handset switch. Henson brings up the rear, counting steps, listening for the rhythm that does not belong. This is where the difference between LRRPs and regular infantry becomes absolute. If a conventional platoon makes contact, doctrine activates automatically. Suppressive fire, maneuver elements, artillery on call, medevac on standby. A network exists to catch mistakes. LRRPs operate beyond that network. If they are compromised, there is no immediate rescue. Helicopters cannot land under canopy. Extraction zones are preselected days in advance and may be unreachable. Artillery is a last resort because it announces position and draws pursuit. Most often, survival depends on evasion, breaking contact without firing a shot. That reality shaped how commanders treated LRRP teams. They did not micromanage because they could not. Once inserted, control was an illusion. Maps were outdated. Intelligence was incomplete. Decisions had to be made by men whose lives depended on those decisions. Kearney learned that lesson during his first LRRP mission outside Dak To in 1967. His team had been compromised by a stray dog in a hamlet they were bypassing. The dog barked. A door opened. Someone shouted. The radio crackled as higher headquarters asked for confirmation. Kearney did not respond. He led the team straight into a creek bed, waded upstream for half a kilometer, then doubled back through elephant grass. They lay submerged for hours, mouths just above water, leeches crawling inside sleeves. By the time he transmitted again, pursuit had passed. No officer ever questioned his decision to go radio silent. They knew that if they tried to control him in that moment, he would be dead. Back in the present, the team halts as Ruiz raises a clenched fist. A faint glow flickers ahead, embers from a cooking fire, masked by brush. Voices murmur. NVA again, close. Kearney weighs options in seconds. Detour left means steeper ground, slower movement. Right leads toward a ravine that may funnel sound. Through is impossible. He chooses left. This kind of decision, terrain-based, consequence-heavy, unreviewable, was routine for LRRPs. It was also why their commanders rarely issued detailed orders. Instead, they issued intent. Confirm presence of regiment in AO. Locate supply routes feeding the valley. Determine if enemy is preparing to move west. How the team achieved that was up to them. Regular infantry leaders often struggled with this concept. Accustomed to directing squads and platoons, they found it unsettling to release control. Some tried anyway, demanding frequent check-ins, exact timelines, rigid reporting formats. Those teams did not last long. Either the commanders adapted or the LRRP missions failed. In some cases, teams were reassigned or quietly ignored by headquarters that did not understand them. In others, senior officers intervened, shielding LRRP units from interference. They understood that reconnaissance cannot be done on a leash. The Army institutionalized this understanding slowly, unevenly. LRRP companies often answered directly to division or corps-level intelligence officers, bypassing battalion command structures. Their briefings were shorter. Their after-action reports were sparse but precise. Kearney's team skirts the fire, boots sinking into soft loam. Sweat chills on skin. No one speaks. At 2300, they reach a planned rest point, a shallow depression screened by fallen logs. Kearney signals a halt. 2 men pull security, the others lower packs with care. Whitman checks the radio. Battery good, no transmissions unless necessary. This self-imposed restraint is another difference. Regular units are encouraged to communicate constantly. LRRPs rationed every word. A single unnecessary transmission could compromise days of work. As they settle, Kearney studies the men's faces in the faint starlight. Tired, focused, controlled. He knows that if something goes wrong tomorrow, no one will be coming for them quickly. He also knows that each man understands that reality completely. That shared understanding is why LRRPs were granted latitude others never saw. It was not favoritism. It was necessity. You cannot command what you cannot see. And you cannot protect men who must survive unseen. March 19th, 1968. 0417 hours. Rain begins without warning. A sudden hiss through the canopy drops hammer leaves, mask sound, and turn the jungle floor slick and treacherous. For Kearney's team, the weather is both curse and cover. Movement becomes harder, but so does detection. They move anyway. 2 nights into the patrol, exhaustion presses in from all sides. Feet are blistered, socks never dry. The men smell of mildew and sweat, a scent they know can carry. Ruiz leads them downslope toward a suspected trail junction marked only by a bend in the river and a stand of taller bamboo. This junction is the reason they are here. Back at division headquarters, an intelligence officer has been trying to confirm rumors of a regimental shift west. A conventional unit cannot penetrate far enough to see it without triggering contact. Air reconnaissance sees only canopy. Sensors are unreliable. Only men on the ground, invisible and patient, can answer the question. That is why LRRPs were treated differently. Their information shaped battles before they began. At 0502, Ruiz freezes. He sinks to one knee, then flattens. Kearney slides forward, careful, deliberate. Through the rain and shadow, he sees it, a trail wider than expected, deeply worn, mud churned by hundreds of boots. Fresh. Recent. Then the sound, the dull clack of wooden pack frames, the murmur of men moving under discipline. An entire company passes within sight. Kearney does not count faces. He watches organization. Security elements forward and rear, spacing consistent. This is not a local force. This is regular NVA infantry moving with purpose. Whitman's eyes meet his. This time the report cannot wait. Kearney dictates in a whisper so soft it barely moves lips. Unit size, direction, estimated timing, equipment observed. Whitman transmits in bursts of 2 seconds, antenna angled low, pausing between each. The rain helps, so does luck. That message will trigger a chain reaction. Air tasking, artillery positioning, battalion alerts. None of it will mention the 6 men soaked and shaking beneath the trees, but without them, the reaction will never happen. This asymmetry, tiny teams influencing massive operations, is what made LRRPs so valuable and so misunderstood. Regular infantry fought what they could see. LRRPs fought the future. Because of that, commanders learned not to burden them with objectives that required combat. Killing an enemy squad meant nothing if it revealed a regiment. Survival was not cowardice, it was mission success. In many cases, LRRP reports were treated as more credible than those from line units. Not because infantry lied, but because they were forced to interpret under pressure. LRRPs observed without engagement. Their perspective was colder, cleaner. Kearney remembered an after-action briefing months earlier. A colonel had listened to a LRRP report, nodded once, and canceled a planned battalion sweep. "If they're there," the colonel had said, "we'll hit them on our terms." That trust was not extended lightly. It also came with consequences. LRRP teams were often sent into areas deemed too dangerous for regular units. They were asked to confirm rumors others dismissed. When intelligence was thin, they filled the gap with flesh and nerve. Casualties, when they happened, were catastrophic. Not because they were frequent, but because there was no redundancy. Losing one man could doom an entire team. By mid-morning, the rain eases. The jungle steams. Kearney signals another halt. They have what they came for. Now comes the hardest part, getting out without becoming a story themselves. Extraction is scheduled for the following night at a landing zone scraped out of jungle by explosives days earlier. If the enemy has shifted, the LZ may be compromised. If weather turns, helicopters may not come. If they are followed, they may have to abort and move for days. No one at headquarters will tell them what to do. They cannot. That is why LRRP leaders were empowered to abort missions without explanation. A regular unit-breaking contact might be questioned. A LRRP doing so was assumed to have a reason. As they begin to move again, Kearney feels the familiar tension settle in his chest. The mission is technically complete. Survival is not. Behind them, unseen, an enemy force continues west, unaware that its secrecy is already broken. Ahead, the jungle closes in, indifferent and waiting. March 20th, 1968, 2146 hours. The landing zone is a scar in the jungle, 30 meters of torn earth and snapped trunks, barely visible even from directly above. Kearney's team reaches its perimeter and melts into the darkness, spreading out, weapons angled outward. No signal yet. The helicopters are late. They always are. Minutes stretch, then 10 more. Sweat chills. Every snapped twig sounds like pursuit. Whitman checks the radio but does not transmit, calling early risks compromise, calling late risks being left behind. This is where command truly ends. Back at base, a lieutenant colonel sits over a map, knowing only that a team should be here by now. He does not pick up the radio. He does not demand updates. He has learned, through other men's mistakes, that pressing LRRPs for reassurance gets them killed. That lesson was not universal. It had been learned the hard way. Early in the war, some commanders treated LRRPs like extended patrols, issuing rigid timelines and frequent reporting requirements. Teams complied until they couldn't. Radios drew fire. Schedules forced movement through compromised terrain. Men died because someone far away needed confirmation. By 1968, the better commanders had adapted. They briefed LRRPs once, clearly, then stepped back. They trusted team leaders to abort, reroute, or disappear if needed. The chain of command became shorter. Not weaker, but quieter. Kearney had once been asked how much oversight he wanted. He had answered honestly, enough to know what matters, not enough to tell me how to breathe. At 21:58, Whitman hears it first, a distant thump, almost felt rather than heard. Rotor wash. The helicopters are coming in low, using terrain masking, a technique perfected because LRRPs demanded it. Kearney raises his hand, no flares, no smoke unless absolutely necessary. They wait until the last second. Then a single strobe flashes, one pulse shielded by a poncho. The reply comes instantly from above. The birds drop in fast, skids barely touch. The team moves as one, practiced, silent. Ruiz boards last, weapon scanning until the door closes. As the helicopter lifts, tracers arc from the tree line, late, inaccurate, angry. The pilot banks hard. The jungle falls away. Only once they are clear does Kearney exhale fully. Back at base, there will be no interrogation, no demand for justification. Kearney will hand over a short report, mark grids on a map, answer a few questions. His superiors will listen closely, not to judge, but to understand. This relationship, mutual restraint between commanders and recon teams, is why LRRPs endured when other specialized programs failed. The Army learned that trust could not be conditional. Either it existed or reconnaissance was theater. Regular infantry units fought by strength and presence. LRRPs fought by absence. As the helicopter races west, the men slump against bulkheads, exhaustion finally allowed. None of them speak. They know that tomorrow, infantry battalions will move into contact guided by what they saw. They also know those battalions will never know their names. That anonymity is the final difference. LRRPs were treated differently because they operated differently, thought differently, and survived differently. They were not braver than other soldiers. They were simply given room to be cautious where others were ordered to be bold. The war demanded both.